Hello again, everyone. This is Yalak. I have another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. This is August 10th, 2017, and my lesson today is entitled, What? And I took that from the whatsoever in the scripture I'm about to read from. If we run over to 1 Kings chapter 8, down to verse 37, Solomon's building, consecrating the temple. And so here Solomon's making this very strong prayer, this very clear prayer, as he is beseeching the Most High for his mercy and his presence to be with the people of Israel. A lot of times when he prays here at the temple that there'll be mercy if the children of Israel should sin, but if they turn back in their heart and pray toward the temple, then he's asking that the Most High would hear and grant them what they're praying about, which is a restoration. So it says here in 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 37 to 48, but I may not read all of those, may or may not. If there be in the land famine, if there be pestilence, blasting, mildew, locust, or if there be caterpillar, if their enemy beseech them in the land of their enemies, whatsoever plague, whatsoever sickness there be, what prayer and supplication soever be made by any man, or by all thy people Israel, which shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hands toward this house. I guess that's why we turn to the east and pray towards Jerusalem. Now, he's mentioning that there are some plagues because of transgressions, some curses, sicknesses, and so on. And we know we can find those in Deuteronomy chapter 28 and Leviticus 26, and the caterpillars and so on are mentioned as well in the book of Joel chapter 2. So we're having this chapter in 1 Kings chapter 8 talk about these things, and he's beseeching the Most High for mercy in this situation, should we ever get back to this place because we transgressed. And he says, whatsoever plague, whatsoever, that means anything that we're dealing with because of transgression, let the prayer that is made correct our path and reunite us with the Most High. So here, he's not making any room for a sacrifice on Calvary for a human to be stretched out on a cross and hammered. He's not making any room for that. And it is possible, if they were hammering nails or spikes into him, that if this was happening today, they might have used an electric gun to do the hammering, an electric gun to nail him to the tree. They would, plug it in and it doesn't need any of that in this case here. He just says if we turn toward this place and pray. So he says, what prayer and supplication may be made by any man? And he stretches his hand towards, right? Then verse 39, then hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and forgive and do, and give to every man according to his ways, whose heart thou knowest. For thou, even thou only knowest the hearts of the children of men, that they may fear thee all the days, and so on. So basically they're turning around. Then he says, moreover, concerning a stranger that is not of thy people, Israel, but cometh out of a far country for thy name's sake. For they shall hear of thy great name, and of thy strong hand, and of thy stretched out arm, when he shall come and pray toward this house. Hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and do according to all that the stranger calleth. So he's saying that the prayer that the Israelite is going to do for mercy and forgiveness of transgression and for being reunited and forgiven is so strong that he's asking the Most High to accept that and bring that restoration and forgive the transgression, remove the transgression. But he's also saying here that while the Israelite does not need Calvary for that restoration, that kind of prayer prayed toward this house is so strong that if the stranger who is not an Israelite should do it as well, because they're seeking after you, because they heard of your great name and so on. The prayer is so strong that even the stranger can pray this and receive the same kind of blessing and connection with the Most High. So even the stranger does not need Calvary. Even the Gentile or the heathen does not need Calvary, is what he is letting us know when you break it down. You understand that? That this kind of prayer is so strong that you don't need Calvary, you don't need baptism, you don't need communion, you don't need all that stuff. You don't need any kind of animal sacrifice, any kind of human flesh sacrifice. People do not have to be killed on a cross for restoration. This chapter, and it's going to go over to the next chapter, is so strong and clear that one wonders why an Israelite was trying to kill flesh with blood spewing out for sins to be forgiven in the first place. I mean, if Solomon knew this at that time, that means the Israelites before him would have known that as well. That means Abraham would have known this as well. That means all these guys would have known, who were walking with the Most High, Noah and all them, that if they just pray and ask forgiveness for any transgression that they may have done, that it would take care of the situation and they did not need to kill people or animals. Because if the soul that sins should die, why is it that your soul continues to live but somebody else dies, or your soul continues to live when you do the transgression but an animal dies? Does that run in line with the soul that sinneth, it shall die? Or should it have said, the soul that sinneth, an animal shall die? Or the soul that sinneth, another man shall die for that sin of the other person? So that person never learns to walk right, because no matter how many times I transgress, you're just going to kill my neighbor, or I'll kill him myself. Or you're going to send your supposed son from heaven to die for me, so I can pay little attention to your Torah because somebody is going to have their blood splashing all over the place for me on an altar. Now look at how it reads, because especially from the people in the Christian church, I just want to make sure that you understand this correctly. So I'm going to read it from the Holy Bible. This is a Catholic version, NRSV. And reading the same thing from 1 Kings chapter 8. And starting at verse 37. If there is a famine in the land, if there is a plague, blight, mildew, locust, or caterpillar, if their enemy beseeches them in any of their cities, whatever plague, whatever sickness there is, whatever prayer. And the King James was saying whatsoever. When you deal with that whatsoever, it's letting you know anything, basically. All these things, he says, whatsoever. So that means it does not matter whatsoever. Alright, I may touch on that whatsoever again here, but hold on, let me go on reading. Whatever plea there is from any individual or from all your people Israel, all knowing the afflictions of their own hearts, so that they stretch out their hands toward this house. Then hear in heaven your dwelling place, forgive, act and render to all whose hearts you know, according to all their ways, for only you know what is in every human heart. So he's basically saying the prayer should be coming from a sincere heart. There's no fakery here. There's no nonchalant kind of, simple attitude that says I don't care and so on, and because an animal is going to die for me, so I don't really have to change. No, in your heart you want to change. It's not no Jesus can die for me, or my neighbor's going to die for me, or an enemy is going to die for me. No, or an animal that my business is doing well. I'm not struggling like the other guy across the street. I can buy 10 sheep if I want. I can buy 10 bulls if I want for this one day, for this one sacrifice alone for my own self. So it doesn't bother me. I can buy a bull real fast on the spur of the moment. But my neighbor now, he has to start saving up months and months and months when the next sacrifice day is coming up to get that animal sacrifice. But me, I can buy 10 of them for just one day, for one sacrifice if it were needed. So it's no big deal for me. I can pay for my sins with my money. If my business, I'm rich, I'm blessed of the Most High. I can do anything I want the day after because I can buy 10 more of these animals. So my heart doesn't need to be changed because my money is just falling out of my pocket. I can just buy animals to sacrifice. But no, he's saying here, you know what's in every man's heart, so that they may fear you all the days that they live in the land that you gave to our ancestors. And that's just showing you that the escape route of this 2,000-year-old Messiah, that he's just going to do it for you on Calvary and you just get off so easily because he did that. It's like, it's just so easy. It's just so simple. It's just crazy. Likewise, when a foreigner who is not of your people comes from a distant land, because of your name, for they shall hear of your great name, your mighty hand, and your outstretched arm. When a foreigner comes and prays toward this house, then hear in heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all that the foreigner calls to you, so that all the peoples of the earth may know your name and fear you, as do your people Israel, and so that they may know that your name has been invoked on this house that I have built. And let's go again with Isaiah 2, verse 2 and 3. That's saying in the end, when the nations are going to come, they're going to come to Jerusalem to learn and so on, right? So you see that Solomon here, or Jedediah, is not saying anything that's inconsistent with that. So, the word is just flowing together. 44, if your people go out to battle against their enemy, by whatever or whatsoever way you shall send them, and they pray to the Most High toward the city that you have chosen, and the house that I have built for your name, then hear in heaven their prayer and their plea, and maintain their cause. Verse 47, yet if they come to their senses in the land to which they have been taken captive, and repent, and plead with you in the land of their captors. So let's say, for instance, we're in America, or we're in Brazil, wherever we are. If we come to our senses in these places, and say we have sinned, we have done wrong, our forefathers have done wrong, and so on, and we have continued to live the same way, we have acted wickedly. If they repent with all their heart and soul in the land of their enemies who took them captive, and pray toward you with their land. You see that? He's breaking down these curses and the plight that we're in detailed words, as well as he's breaking down how the return should be with the prayer. So he's detailing with all these different words, and he never takes the time to put into the details anything about baptism or Calvary, and blood being shed and dripping from Calvary's hill of sorrow. Why would he not put something like this in a detailed outline of all these different parts that make up the curses and so on that will be leading us to this point because of transgressions and the way back to restoration? Why wouldn't he put that in? Because the Israelites didn't think like that. They didn't believe the stuff. Those things were for the other nations. But the Israelites had their commandments already from the Most High to keep Torah, and all they would have to do is to return to it. So there was no need for any kind of Calvary. He kept saying, whatsoever. So whatsoever they're going through because of the transgressions that they've made, when they come to their senses and return and just stretch their hand toward this house and pray and make confessions and so on, and seek your face again and so on, then forgive them, right? Even if they're in the land of their captivity. So wherever they are, and pray to you toward their land, which you gave to their ancestors, the city that you have chosen, and the house that I have built for your name, then hear in heaven, your dwelling place, their prayer and their plea, maintain their cause and forgive your people who have sinned against you. So the forgiveness comes just from this prayer and turning and stretching their hands toward Jerusalem, toward that house alone. It comes from just all this alone. No need for a Calvary, for a cross. No need for whatever happened in Gethsemane. Okay, he goes on, he says, and all the transgressions they have committed against you. So you don't need no blood from Calvary, Lamb of Calvary, to wash out some sin that has stained your soul and all that. Because he's saying no stain is going to be left on anybody, because he's saying if you just do this kind of prayer in this kind of way, then all their transgressions that they have committed against you, right, will be removed, and grant them compassion in the sight of their captors. So when the Christian church was teaching us all along, which some of the Hebrew camps are still teaching, that the sin was just rolled back for the animal sacrifices until the time when this Mashiach came, that's not scriptural. Absolutely not biblical. It was actually forgiven or removed from them. It was not on their account anymore, because it says here, all their transgressions that they have committed against you, and grant them compassion in the sight of their captors, so they may have compassion on them, right? So he's saying, forgive your people who have sinned against you, forgive them. So how come you can use that same word forgive with Jesus, and it means all your sins have been forgiven now because you accept Jesus' Calvary work? But when the same forgive is saying here in the scriptures that does not include anything about Calvary, then all of a sudden this forgive cannot mean forgive, cannot mean removal of transgressions. Well, if it's forgiven, it's no longer on your account. You're not guilty anymore. So at the point when the Israelites would do this, they did not need any more forgiveness because they were already forgiven. So Jesus wasn't coming to try to do anything for their sins, because if it was already forgiven or removed, there's nothing to die for. Let me run over now to chapter 9 and verse 3. So he says, forgive them. Now if you look in chapter 9, 1 Kings chapter 9 and verse 3, the Most High said to him, I have heard your prayer and your plea, which you have made before me. I have consecrated this house that you have built. So the Most High, by doing that, is letting him know, I'm going along with what you have prayed and asked for. And put my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will be there for all time. Right? So it's basically letting him know, yeah, I'm granting you all this stuff. My eyes, my heart will be there for all time. So if it's going to be there for all time, then that's where the presence of the Most High is. That's where the move of God is. And that's where you're going to experience your salvation. So how did this Jesus come and remove that all time that the Most High is talking about? How? Whatsoever means anything done will be forgiven, as in the things that we did in Deuteronomy 28 that, talk about those transgressions. All those transgressions would be cleared. So there is no need for a Jesus. No need. But return, when he says, if your people will hear and stretch your hands toward this house and pray and so on, and return to you, basically meaning return to your Torah, return to your instructions, then return right there means return to practices, beliefs, rituals, teachings, relative or equal to what was taught and believed at the time when that prayer was being made. Because in the understanding of the people at the time, the children of Israel, no one would have been returning to Jesus or to Calvary sacrifice of a human blood and flesh, because Israelites did not believe and teach those things. So they would not be returning to that. So the prayer includes kind of like a command as well to return. Israelites would not return unto Jesus based on a Calvary type of sacrifice, because Israelites did not teach those things. So no Israelite today should be associating themselves with any Jesus sacrifice on Calvary for any reason. None. It does not make sense. And the teachers who are teaching you these things, they very well know it. And the teachers who are teaching you these things, they very well know it. No one believed in or taught salvation in Jesus Christ at any time, but they only kept the Torah of the Most High. Now in verse 50, 1 Kings 8 verse 50 says, "And forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions, wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion." It says, all their transgressions. All. That means nothing left that's going to be waiting for some blood from Calvary to wash out. And he should be washing with water or something like that. But if you're trying to make this stuff clean. But in any case, there is nothing being left for a Calvary to clean, because all would be forgiven, as verse 50 is saying. All their transgressions, not most of them, or some, or just the bigger ones, or just the little ones and leave the big ones for Calvary. No, he says all their transgressions which they have transgressed. Forgive thy people that who have sinned against you, and all of their transgressions. But look at how this Jesus is faith. Now let's run over to the New Testament and look here in Luke 12 verse 10. Apparently this Jesus is speaking here, and he says, "And whosoever shall speak a word against the Son of Man, it shall be forgiven him. But unto him that blasphemeth against the Holy Ghost, it shall not be forgiven." So Jesus has sins, or at least a sin, that will never be forgiven. Never. But in the Hebrew writings, there it is saying, in 1 Kings 8:50, all the transgressions could be forgiven. Whatsoever they have done. All of it.